I welcome all of you to this book launch session. We are going to launch 2 books today in this session. Both are wonderful. One is Indian mythology through classical dance, and another one is in Hindi, Kathak Lok, Mandir, Parampara Aur Itihas. Ladies and gentlemen, we are really privileged to have Ms. Shovana Narayan with us today, and a big round of applause for her. And I would like to request Ms. Shovana Narayan and Ms. Geetika Kalha to please come on the stage. We are ready for the book launch. I would also like to invite Ms. Sharmila Bhartari, a trained Odissi dancer and a wonderful artist, a singer, a dancer, to come on the stage for the book launch. I would also like to request Mr. Sanjay Arya, the man behind this Shubhi publication, under which publication both the books have been published. So please, Sanjay Arya sir, please come on the stage for the launch of the book. And I would also like to request our volunteers to please assist our eminent panelists. First, we'll launch the Indian mythology through classical dance. We all know that dance is a timeless interpretation of life. When poetry comes into movement, then it becomes dance. The forms of classical dances are the repository of our culture, ladies and gentlemen. A big round of applause for this lovely, wonderful creation by Shovana Narayan and Geetika Kalha. Another wonderful piece we are launching today is the Kathak Lok, Mandir, Parampara Aur Itihas. India has 8 classical forms of dances, and Kathak is one of them. In fact, it is a master form of classical dances. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now I would like to request Sanjay Arya and Sharmila Bhartari to take their seats. May I request Ms. Shovana Narayan and Geetika Kalha to please take their seats. And at the same time, I would also like to invite Shalini Rao as a discussant for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to take the privilege to introduce our 2 eminent authors for today's session, Shovana Narayan. Ladies and gentlemen, she doesn't need any introduction. She's synonymous with the Kathak. She's a recognized Kathak dancer and a career officer with Indian Audit and Account Service. She performs in India and internationally, as had been awarded with Padma Shri. Trained under Birju Maharaj, she's discovered 8 Kathak villages near Gaya with documentary and official records. She has written several books. She was the first ever Indian dancer who for a long period of time combined a full-fledged career as a servicing civil servant in the government of India before retiring for the service in 2010. We welcome you, ma'am, and a good round of applause for her. Now I would like to introduce Ms. Geetika Kalha. Just a moment. She is an Indian Administrative Service Officer for over 30 years. Geetika Kalha has done pioneering work in revival, interpretation, and dissemination of cultural heritage. With a background in history and culture, she is now a writer and a consultant who specializes in rural tourism, museums, and cultural interpretation. As president of the Village Life Improvement Foundation, that is We Life, she continues to improve health and sanitation in villages and has provided complete wastewater management and sanitation in many villages. Apart from research and writing, her passion includes birding, traveling, and painting. We welcome you, ma'am. A big round of applause to her. Now coming to Shalini Rao. She is the main discussant today in this session. She is a trained Bharatnatyam dancer and also a teacher. She has done her Masters in Performing Arts from Bombay University, and she has also got the opportunity to get trained under none other than but the Shovana Narayan. So now, I would like to request Ms. Shalini Rao to kindly begin this session. Thank you very much.
Namaskar. It's an honor. I have known Didi for quite some time now. She's a Padma Shri awardee and yet so humble. I mean, I don't think I've come across anybody else the way, as any other dancer the way she is. She's received Sangeet Natak Academy Awards. She has been awarded, Didi and I, we share the same state. We're from Bihar. And she has been awarded awards from the Bihar state government for excellence. There are very few dancers who actually come from Bihar. And let me start with this, the discussion on Kathak Lok. Because Kathak Lok actually, Shovana ji and Geetika ji, they traveled across Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So, Kathak Lok, Mandir, Parampara Aur Itihas. My question is to both of you. How did you think about co-authoring this book? How did this happen? Didi, I'll start with you.
Good afternoon. First of all, let me say how grateful I am to the VOW Lit Fest, to Sanjeev Chopra, to the entire team, to Shalini, to this young, beautiful lady, and to our publishers. Shubhi Arya, and not Shubhi Arya, Shubhi Publications and Vitasta for bringing out the book Kathak Lok, and Shubhi Publications for bringing out the book Mythology, and to Sharmila ji for releasing it. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful when an artist is, any book is done, released by an artist. Or so it's wonderful indeed. It's lovely to see, ma'am, you here, and you're an old Dunite, and so it's, we were sharing some beautiful reminiscences of my early performances here. As far as Kathak Lok is concerned, it started off with the performance. And it was in 2003 that I was performing in Bodh Gaya Festival when a journalist asked me whether I would be visiting Kathak village. Now, I only knew of a dance form by the name of that came from a village, and that was Kuchipudi. But Kathak village, I had learned from the best of maestros. I knew Lachu Maharaji, Shambhu Maharaji, my guru was Birju Maharaji, and from the Jaipur Gharana, my guru was Kundal Lal Sisodia in Bombay. And all I knew, I was, brushing shoulders with Pandit Sundar Prasad ji, but never once in all my years of my life, till that time, I had ever heard of the word Kathak village, कि Kathak गांव भी होता है. And so obviously it sparked our curiosity, my musicians and I. Subsequently, I went back a second time, found 3 Kathak villages. I photographed all those villages, even the school notice boards, came back to Delhi with this and say, yes, here it is, here it is. Predictably, the entire dance fraternity, the entire art fraternity heard it through one ear and out through the other. Oh, I'm a devout Kathak, so I must be making it up. In spite and despite all the photographic evidences. Obviously, I did not give up, but one was disheartened. Much later, 12 years later or 11 years later, I was looking at the census figures, census 2011. And suddenly I find many Kathak villages cropping up with village code. So I typed in other names of other dance forms. No village code came up, except for the Kuchipudi. But otherwise, that also came up with a different name. But it was Kathak village. There were 6, 7 of them which came up. Obviously, with village codes, with all the tehsils and everything. And therefore, that started the journey. And it was serious because I said, now there's official stamp, Government of India, official. That taught me a lesson, the first one, that always go into government records, get the official things. And I think Kathak village was calling us. The Kathak Lok is from the village. So the Kathak villages were calling us to asking us to do it because Providence, Geetika and I met on a plane. And then when we started talking, and that is how our journey together started. Before that, we did not know each other, except maybe we may have crossed, met in some meetings or the others, but really not in that serious kind of a way. And that started our journey. And since then, we traveled the length and breadth of UP, Bihar, and then we came across, every time we went, we found new villages, Then we found many villages by the name of Kathikan, Kathika, Kathakauli, etc. But all were there. And the question was, we found all of them in UP, Bihar. Majority in UP and then 4 in Bihar. But what about Rajasthan, which is again a den of Kathaks? And we again toured the length and breadth of Rajasthan and again delved into archival records because we were very careful that everything we do, we are going to look into archival records, the original sources, and we never found a single village by the name of Kathak. So that was our journey. Then in UP Bihar, when I asked them, when we were asking questions, why is it named Kathak village? So they said कि अरे कथक लोग रहते थे, तो कथक लोग रहते थे तो ये थे क्या, कौन सी गाजर मूली है, कौन से खेत की मूली है, तो he says कथक लोग हैं, they were given land, villages, land grants in Jagir as Mafi land, that no taxation would happen, but it was for their sustenance. And कहाँ क्या करते थे? They would only enact out, recite out, give updesh through Kathak, through the medium of gesticulation and mime. Kaha? Temples and village, and religious ceremonies, religious occasions. So we said, Acha, temple. Then we started going through all the villages. Would you believe it? We found a lot of villages empty, devoid of Kathaks. So we said, but where are the Kathak Loks? We are looking for Kathak Lok. Each one of you everywhere says, even if the community was inhabited by XYZ castes, but they said they were Brahmins. Another thing everybody said, they were only Brahmins. And so it was only, finally we landed up in Ayodhya. They said, go to Ayodhya, you'll see them at Savan Jhula. Sure enough, for 3 years, we really sort of, जैसे कहते हैं ना, डेरा जमा देना in Ayodhya ke Maharaja's residence, and then we saw the Kathaks. They would all congregate and they were dancing in all the temples. And it was a recent phenomena, but Pushteni, generations after generations, generations after generations, they were all there. And similarly in other places. Finally, we saw the Kathak Lok, had an occasion to discuss with them, talk to them, find out why did they leave their villages? Why did they abandon their villages? That is another story which I'll leave it to Geetika to tell you. But here we again saw, when we first saw this Kathak member of the Kathak Lok in the doing the Nritya Seva, they said कि हम performance नहीं देते, हम तो नृत्य सेवा करते हैं. So it was Nritya Seva for them. And when they were doing the Nritya Seva, it was interesting to see that how an Updesh was being given. It was really the Updesh, and it reminded me of the first chapter, the vision and mission and aim written in the Natya Shastra. That if you read verses, chapter 1, verses 7 to 18, it'll give you all the aim, vision and mission of, of what dances and music, performing arts is all about. And that it has to be audio-visual in nature. And it is कि लोगों जो है अधर्म की ओर जो जा रहे हैं वो अपने कर्तव्य और duties and in the righteous path should be directed, and that the best way to direct them is through this kind of Updesh, through the audiovisual medium, but which is available for Shruti and seeing by people of all varnas. But only the Brahmins can do it, but it can be seen and heard, so because the Veds, etc. cannot be. And then we came to know about the three kinds of Updesh. The Ved Sammit Updesh, the Suhrid Sammit Updesh, and the Kanta Sammit Updesh, which goes straight to the heart. So here these were the aspects. In Rajasthan, it was a different story. They were all, we also videoed them, incidentally. Everybody was videoed so that nobody can say that we have put words in their mouths. We were extra careful about anything and everything. And went to the local administration also to find out about. Then the question was, what are they talking about and what are they enacting? That is, we'll come to that later. And in Rajasthan, we found that apparently they were, a lot of them come from their background, the original background is from the drumming background, as drummers. And so that there were lots of charans and bhans, but we did not find Kathak in any of the catalogues. Even in all their archival material, we went to Bikaner, to Gunijan Khana and others, but much later, only from the late 19th century, we started finding it. Names, but not before that. And then apparently it seems, I mean, that is just a guesswork, that a lot of, but not only a guesswork, but it was clearly said by Rameshwar Singh Bhati and Shri Pandit Pannalal Kathak from Shri Ganga Nagar about the origins of most of the Kathak gharanas of today from Rajasthan, that of their drumming background, that they were all drummers. Nagarchis, Damamis and etc. And ek aur hai na word? Dholis, Dama. Then we also went into the official records of each and everything was being borne out, and in the even in our Bhavishya Puran, when they have even categorized the Kathaks. So, and the Kathaks are taken as Brahmins, Madhya level Brahmin, not of this and not of this, but Madhya level Brahmin. Mahabharat in the Adi Parv has said, Kathakashcha pare rajan shamnashcha vanaukasa divyakhanani ye chapi patanti madram tuja. Similarly, in Sangeet Ratnakar, verse number 1348 in the Nritya Adhai, talks of the Kathaks, and again it gives you an idea about what was the status, the exalted position that they held. And then perhaps one of the most telling thing is the Prakrit inscription, of which has been dated by two archaeologists, one from the north, one from the south. Difference is only about 150, 200 years. One takes it to 3rd, 4th century before Christ. The other one takes this Prakrit inscription to 1st, 2nd century before Christ. So that we get even the northern view and the southern view. And and it is Magga Sirsuk Pakhe Nakatte Vara Nasiye Neriye Uttar Purat Thime Disi Bhage Gangaye Mahanadiye Tate Sabvo Kathaka Bhingar Natenam Stuti Tisi Kayam Ehi Raya Adi Na Ho Bhavenam Pase. तो पूरा आपका जिस तरह से करते हैं वो पूरा इसमें निहित है, दिखता है. I'll now hand it over to Geetika.
Geetika ji, both of you traveled around. I want to ask you one question. Kathak Lok, did you find women dancers there?
Good question. No. The traditional Kathaks are Brahmins, and they are, as she said, they are from hereditary Brahmins, and they are mentioned, as she's already mentioned, from 4th century BC onwards, and their role was specifically to preach dharma. So it was not an entertainment kind of a thing. So, and their own women were never taught dance. They might learn from sitting around their brothers and cousins and learning and seeing it, but they were never allowed to perform because it was considered to be a family business, you can call it. So since the lady would get married and go to another family, so they did not encourage women to learn their traditional things. So the traditional Kathak families still date, except now I think maybe the next generation that is coming up, about girls who are now 3 and 4 may learn to dance, but till now no woman of those families has danced. So the introduction of women really comes much later, in about the 18th century. So that is the answer to your question.
Moving on to the next book.
No, I'd just like to complete a
Please,
little bit
please.
about this book, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
Because she's left off where Shovana has explained what the traditional Kathaks have done. But we can't get away from the fact that most of India thinks that Kathak is a Mughal dance and that it is a dance of the Tawaifs. So we can't avoid these questions if we are going to write a decent book on Kathak, you know. So we went into that whole issue. And the first point was that since when have the Kathaks been mentioned in our history? That Shovana has already mentioned, from 4th century to 19th century, right through the 4th century BC to 19th century AD, and right up to the British writings, Germans and others, various travelers and all, which you can read in our book, have all been mentioning Kathaks doing Nritya Seva. So they are there all through. Now, when does this business of dancing girls and Mughals come in? So we examined the dance itself first, every aspect, and I have the expert with me. She would even dance and show me the whole thing. And so it was like every bit, Tatkar and whatever, the Ghunguru, and I'll leave the names to her. There's not a single element of Middle East influence on any aspect. We studied the Natya Shastra, the Sangeet Ratnakar, and Nartan Nritya, and what is happening today, all through. That this is what this book says, this one says, this one says, and what are they doing today? Is there any Middle Eastern influence anywhere? There isn't any. So where has this come from? We don't know. Now, some people say that, but there are words, there's Ahmad, and there is, different bits of vocabulary have come. But our reply to that is yes, vocabulary has come from Persian vocabulary, has about 6-7 words have entered the Kathak vocabulary. It's like yoga today. Yoga also you do bridge pose. Now, does that mean that the bridge pose is English? You do the snake pose. That's Bhujangasana, that is Chakra Asana. But if we use an English name for it, doesn't mean that it is that the asana is changed. So there is an element of words have come in at later period, but much, much later. But some say that Kathaks dance to Thomri. But they can dance to poetry or to Baba Black Sheep if you want. That is the skill. They are trained to dance to any story that you want to tell, anything you want to tell. They have such fantastic training. They can, you stand up and say 5 lines and she can enact it for you, you know. So they can dance to anything. So as the taste changes, they have changed. So Kathak has evolved. It's not as if it's static. But classical Kathak has no influence of the Middle East. Today, of course, a lot of people are doing all kinds of things, hip-hop Kathak and Sufi Kathak and something Kathak and whatever Kathak, salsa Kathak. So, I mean, so we don't want to, we have mentioned all that, but classical Kathak till the 21st century is still what it was earlier. Now the
Geetika ji,
dance.
I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
sorry.
but
Okay,
I've been
just
told-
one sentence. What changed was when the British came. And that will leave you to read the book and find out what happened.
So moving on to the next book, I have just one question because we're running out of time. What can the reader expect when they pick up the book? Which book? The other book, Indian Mythology Through Classical Dance.
Why don't you start, then I will give it.
All right. Okay, so the Indian mythology book was started after we finished the first book. So it is really in our minds. After all, when you're doing something, your mind still is in a continuity. So what, as Shovana said, is that the Kathaks, when they're dancing in temples, they are enacting mostly mythological stories which preach dharma. Now, what is it about stories that is interesting? Now, if you hear a story only if it's interesting or if it is important to you, right? And now what makes a story interesting is something which Aristotle mentioned long back, which is, there are 7 things to it. Now, I hope I remember all 7. One is a plot, one is a characters, one is a theme, one is diction. You should be able, okay, join me. Melody, decor and spectacle. Now you need this. Now mythology has all 7. You can, the characters are better than any superheroes. There are spectacles, there are costumes, there are dance, there's music, there's everything. So here you have a kind of material in mythology which tells the best story. So all cultures which have used verbal oral transmission of their knowledge have used song, music, and all these spectacles to pass on knowledge. So mythology is not just, stories. It is to pass on the knowledge to people, to teach people what is the value. So we have taken in the second book certain 4 stories, just as examples. First of all, and we've also explained how in India is the only country where a book like Natya Shastra has been written, which tells you how to enact. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 31 kinds of eye movements listed. Imagine those fellows who are writing 31, kind of eyes, drishti or something. Drishti bhedas. Codified them. She should correct me. And so, I mean, we have a whole text to do all this, and our classical dancers are trained to do all this, whether it is Bharatnatyam, whether it is Kathak, whether it is Odisha, all of them know how to tell these stories in this manner. So another thing that we've done about this, in this book, which is not usually done on Indian mythology, is that we've even studied tribal mythologies, like the Australian Aborigines, and how it is also similar to India. You've all heard of the Aborigines' Dreamtime stories? You're familiar with Dreamtime stories? Dreamtime is when the creation was done. And they believe that there was a great spirit which is shown in the form of a rainbow serpent. Now, the rainbow serpent is not 7 colors, but it is shown as across the sky, and on one end it touches the earth, and it has 5 colors. Now, when we look at a serpent, we think of Kundalini. When we look at 5 colors, we think of our Panch Mahabhut. And we see that it is, and those stand for fire, air, earth, sky, and ether. Wind, water, right. So when we see it, so with Indian eyes, you see an Australian Aboriginal dance form. It's again telling the same thing. And these dances are danced in sacred spaces. And the story is to tell you how to live with your society and how to live in your environment. Exactly what our Brahmins were doing here. How to live in society, how to live this thing, and how to achieve God. If you see the Native American stories, there the Great Spirit created the world, and then he made this beautiful earth. I'm putting it very short, but you'll get more detail in the book. Created this beautiful world, and he said, now I need someone to look after it. So he created man. And he sent man down. And the man is now coming down, and he's seeing this beautiful place with animals and birds and trees and everything, and he's told that you're going to be responsible for all this. I have made it, you're going to be responsible. So he comes down and he touches the earth very gently, because he doesn't want that he should disturb anything that God has made. So their dances are gentle. Till today, they believe the same thing. Now, these are actually very, very fascinating, how mythology and religion and dance are so connected. So that is the crux of this book.
Shobhana ji, would you talk about the same, the book, Mythology and Classical Dance? So your thoughts, how is it different from any other book that...
Well, I'll just now, it's the same. It's
Same question,
where
please.
she's left off and you're asking the question. It is, when I'm thinking of it today, when you're talking about how is it in Indian dance, yes, that is what we are doing. Because through that, either we are paying reverence to the gods, or like the Kathaks are doing, not the stage Kathaks. By the way, we have to distinguish between the proscenium Kathak and the temple Kathak, because the emphasis of the two are very different. Theirs is Bhav Pradhan, Sangeet Pradhan, Text Pradhan, mythology, Shastra Pradhan. Shastra in the sense of religious text, जैसे कि रामायण है, महाभारत है, श्लोक वगैरह जो है वो जो, और यहाँ when and in the proscenium, like in all dance forms, there is technical virtuosity. So there the technical virtuosity is minimal, that is not important, but here it is much more important. So that's the difference. Now, but we are all doing mythology and we are all enacting it out. That is why when she's talked about the Natya Shastra, it is codification of all the gestures, hand gestures, brahmaris, bhaumis, akashis, everything, all the charis and the gatis, because they are taken from real life. But in today's circumstance, now this everyone, even in our folk rituals, you'll find folk dance, folk dances and folk rituals are all revolving around mythology. Every folk ritual and folk dance has a mythology as its basis. Agar Krishna ka hai, if you're even talking about, say even a Garba, then you're talking about, what are we talking about? Again, the Devi and the entire thing. When we are talking about, if I'm talking about Tandav, agar hum ye koi bhi Tandav hai, we have 7 kinds of Shiv Tandavs and all different, and one of Krishna Tandav when he did it on Kalia. So, and then you have the Ras, everything. Now, so we see that these are the subjects which are evergreen also. They are not only rooted in Stone Age, but it is actually, it is happening every day. In fact, there's a saying, कि अगर आप महाभारत ले लें, and there's everything that you experience in life and you see in the world, you'll find it in the Mahabharata. If it's not there in the Mahabharata, that means it doesn't happen in real life. So that is the kind of all-encompassing feature of the Mahabharata. Similarly, you know, the Ramayana has a different feature to it and others have different. I'll come to now today. Earlier, but even in the evolution of our classical dances, the Natya Shastra is talking about what it's saying. The first is that Tripurari Dahan ka, wo jo aap unhone karwaya. Now, what is the Tripurari? You know, okay, the Tripurari Tandav and the pura story of the Tripurari, this thing was enacted out by the Devis and the Devatas and the Bharatas and everything. Bharata, incidentally, young students, means an actor. It's the name, but it also means an actor. Then those were performed, but what was important is that today they are evergreen. When I'm thinking of Tripurari, what is it? If you look at it, they are all talking about the planetary motion. Kya hai? What is the mythology? That so much of powers were given, the Asuras went on a rampage as usual, when too much of power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that was the whole case. And so in order to counterbalance it, he's only one shot can be through all the three. And that is when it's aligning itself. What do you see? How do you see it in the present term? It is, isn't it the kind of one axis when all of them you are talking about solar eclipse, lunar eclipse? What is it? In one axis, the two of them are coming. You're aligning. Now, when all the three planets are aligning at the same time, which we give it the heaven, the earth, and the nether world. But in other words, all the planets. Now, the alignment of the planets, and then when that it goes, call it an eclipse in the modernistic sense, or whatever. Similarly, if I'm talking about, let's take one Puranic Katha of Mahabharata, Draupadi Chirharan. We all know the story of Draupadi Chirharan. खींचे जा रहे हमारे दुशासन खींचे जा रहे हैं द्रौपदी का चीर. Never ending, whatever it is. Now, what has happened? Can I relocate it in contemporary terms? Of course, it is because it's evergreen. All these incidents, in contemporary terms also, the Draupadi Chirharan in gender terms is still happening. That is why you have this beautiful poem written very recently, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm forgetting the name of the Hindi poet. He says, Utho Draupadi Shastra Uthalo, ab na Govind aayenge. तो फिर बहुत ही खूबसूरत है. That is what it is all about today. What you're saying, empowers yourself, women empowerment. क्योंकि अब तो अपना शस्त्र उठाओ, because your defense is in your hand. But if I look at it in environment terms, you, I, the little children, we are teaching everyone. We are the modern day Dushasan. And Draupadi is the mother Prithvi, the environment. And the cheer around is the climate, the entire space around. And it says, दुशासन दुशासन बस करो धरती का चीर हरण मत करो. दुशासन बस करो धरती का चीर हरण मत करो. फिर द्वापर को दोहराने का दुस्साहस मत करो. दुशासन बस करो बस करो बस करो.
Do we have time for audience question? Yes. We have? Yes. Any 2 questions? Audience, any 2 questions?
So first of all, congratulations on these books, and thank you so much for bringing this before us at the Wow Dehradun. We are very thrilled about the subject. My quick question, the inspiration for the second book, you know, the mythological stories cutting across different cultures, which find a manifestation in classical dance forms. You mentioned the South American, you mentioned the Aboriginals, and incidentally, the Aboriginals were actually are related genetically to the Gonds and the Bhils, and that larger subcontinent called Gondwana land, but that's another story. So what really set you thinking on the larger international harmony between mythology and classical? What was the catalyst? Like you mentioned, the catalyst for the Kathak book.
First
Thank
of
you.
all, the international part of it, when we are looking into Greek mythology, why do you say Greek mythos? The word mythology, mythos, comes from the Greek word, which again, all of us have grown up with Greek mythology. There is so much to it. Then we started looking beyond, and therefore we started choosing those places which are not really, because everybody's talking about Venus and so on and so on and this and that, So we went, because every culture has its own set of beliefs. In Lithuania, when I went over there, they call it the pagan belief. Call it by any name, but it is mythology, but the pagan belief. Now in Lithuania, what do? Even now there is a ritual that the ladies, they are doing some penance, and then they go to that, there's a little strip of a forest and a tongue of a river kind of coming over there, and then they're inviting the rain gods. भगवान इंद्र की पूजा हो रही है कि आप लेते आइए, and they are dragging something. What did they mention? They were dragging, and they're dragging and singing and dancing, dragging and singing and dancing and praying to the rain gods to give them rain. So what is it? Here again is the seed of mythology that you're seeing. So every culture, whether today they might do not believe in it, but had their base, their cultural base in some mythology or the other. So we went beyond that to look into the unknown or not so well-known terrains. Maybe Geetika would like to add.
No, it's all right.
So thank you, ma'am. It seems that it should not end. We were really loving the conversation. So this question is, as the classical form, the dance forms, the basic idea, the purpose is to transform, and it's a worship. It's not the entertaining piece. This is what I understand. What I am seeing that for the sake of saving some art form, for say, I belong to Uttarakhand, and there are a lot of, due to a migration, people, land up to plain areas, and there are many festivals, they just vanished. And the many dance forms are also vanishing. So, for the sake of saving those dance forms, folklore, probably, there's a lot of fusion happening. So, I really don't like that, and it's a painful. But how do you take this? Because the basic idea, the transformation part, there's the same thing. The sacred area has to be there in the villages. There has to be time. This particular time we are going to sing that. This particular time we are going to have this. But now there's no occasion. People are. Fusing it. So how do you take this?
Well, I think change is a constant. That we all know. Charayveti, charayveti, charayveti. हमारे उपनिषद का saying है. But while undergoing change, I welcome change. For example, in my own lifetime, in more than 7 decades of my lifetime, I've seen Kathak, the presentation of all dance forms change. When people had more time, so everything was extended. So the presentation, then the technological advancement came. Then you started using more lights and other amplification sounds and lights. It happened in all, it affected. Some of them really in the positive sense. Today, the security environment has narrowed all the presentations down. Earlier it used to be, अगर आपने 2-2.5 घंटे नहीं नाचा तो कोई डांसर ही नहीं है, कोई आप सिंगर ही नहीं है, कोई आज अगर हो जाता है, मैडम ज़रा 40 मिनट में ख़त्म कर दीजिएगा, मैडम बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया, 1 घंटा आप दे रहे हैं, वाह 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 क्या बात है. तो फिर you know it is like that. So that is because of the security environment around. The other external ambience has changed. So that is there. So I acknowledge all these changes. But to say that to completely disregard what was your origin, it doesn't mean that origin has to be rooted in Stone Age, because that itself has also undergone changes. If you read the same movement as described in the Abhinay or a Gati, as described in the Abhinay, Darpan is a little different, or a hand gesture is different in the Natya Shastra. You look at Sri Hasta Muktavali, it's different. And I'm now reading another book, Sangeet Darpana, of not Chatur Damodar, but of Gauri Ishwar. It is again different. So things are changing, evolving, even within the traditional classical format, which is welcome. But to kill its Atma, I think we ourselves are striking at the very roots. आप उखाड़ रहे हैं अपने आप को. हम फिर we'll become, our foundations are not strong. That even any small gust of a wind will blow us away. Let us have very strong foundations, but have an open mind, open heart, and be able to appreciate all cultures of the world. Take the good things from them. For example, today, we have adopted the violin. Carnatic music, violin is a staple, sort of an instrument. Now, violin was not part of us. But ever since the colonial rule, violin has become part. So similarly, you have so many other things. So I think the intelligence to accept or to disregard, it lies in our hands, but it also lies on each and every home and the cultural environment in that home. And sometimes economic compulsions are there, I understand. They have to earn money, but at the same time, you need food for the soul, for the mind and soul. Why is it कि आज भी पुराने गाने अच्छे लगते हैं, बॉलीवुड के ही सही, लेकिन नए वाले कोई आप कहें कि पॉपुलर तो है ना, ज़रा धुन बता दो, धुन कोई बताएगा नहीं, लेकिन पुराने गाने गुनगुनाते रहेंगे.
I wish the session would go on, just like you, but I am being prompted, and we have to end this session. Thank you, Shovana ji. Thank you, Geetika ji. Their books are available in the stalls, so please go and check. They're here. They're here also. Huh? So you could just
We have our publisher over here, the gentleman who actually initiated Mythology book, the Shubhi publication, and he was kind enough to take up the Hindi publication of Kathak Lok. And the English publication is done by Vitasta. She's elsewhere at the moment, attending another session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. आपने at least dancers को तो के लिए बहुत ही अच्छा काम किया है. There are other dancers sitting here. They picked up your books from the stall. जब से आए हैं, these girls, they picked up the books and they were like, हमें तो लेके जानी है, मिलेगी नहीं दोबारा किताब. So, thank you. So but then when you are here, please pick it up, check the books out. They are here at the stalls. Of course, you can take the autographs. They are here. You pick them up now. Take the autographs.
I just want to say, Sharmila ji is here. She was doing a bit of Iti Nritya in the morning. And isn't Rabindranath Tagore a great example of being rooted in tradition, yet being very contemporary?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to Ms. Shovana Narayan.